Hello and welcome to Off the Record. If anything disastrous has happened in the music industry in the past week, if Tom rejoined Blink-182,
that would be a disaster, huh?
If the Misfits stopped being scary, well, we missed it. I am traveling to 90-degree weather while it snowed here this morning in Philadelphia, and Jesse and I are doing a little middle of the week episode. If you're listening live on Adobe, you can subscribe to us on iTunes by searching Off the Record. And if you are a iTunes listener and you would like to try listening on Adobe, please go to adobe.com. We air on Thursdays at 7 p.m. Eastern. We got a little bit of a heavier start of the episode today, and then we'll get back into insulting each other. But Jesse, you went through a little life event the second half of 2014, and we had talked about talking about it at some point, and today is the day we're going to talk about it a little bit.
So for the majority of the time we've been doing this podcast, I was undergoing cancer treatment. About, I think, like the fourth episode in, I had been working a lot, and a lot of the time when I work too much, my ears will build up too much wax, and this time it built up some. And usually what I do is when it does this, I go, okay, this is the side I have to take a few days off. So I took a few days off, but it was still really waxy. Yeah, I mean, I can't work, like, doing any real work when my ears are like this. And so I went to a doctor to get it cleaned out, and he thankfully felt around my neck and figured out that I had a lump on my thyroid. And after that, we biopsied it, and I found out I had cancer on my thyroid, which, if you don't know, thyroid cancer is, the way the doctors would always put it is, if you had to choose a cancer and you had to spin the wheel of fortune of cancer, this is the one you'd want to land on. We've talked about this a little bit, but like, I ride my bike 12 miles to work most days. I eat nothing but organic food for over a decade. I juice every day. I do everything as healthy as you could possibly do it. And while that's not something I think people get mistaken, that's not going to prevent you from getting cancer or something like that. What it's going to do is it's going to make it so you recover really fast. And you're going to weather it better than most people. But this, I think one of the things that we get really confused about in this, and what I wanted to talk about this was for, is that I had a lot of dumb thoughts, and I know a lot of musicians as well who have a lot of dumb thoughts about this type of stuff. One of the reasons I really didn't want to tell anybody about this is because when people hear that you have cancer, they assume you're going to do, you're like going through this horrible thing where you're like brought down and you're like a little bit your head's not in the game and you're weak and things are happening. And that can be the case with some cancers, or a lot of them. But for me, what was crazy is I felt the best I ever felt in my life the whole time. And then like 2 weeks later after surgery, I felt even better than that. And I've continued to feel really, really amazing most of the time.
Except during Taylor Swift discussions.
Yeah. That's definitely true. I think that was one of the weird things is that, like, I still was doing great work and I never really like felt anything. There was never like a point where I like was sitting there like, wow, I'm like, not doing up to my full potential. I was always at my full potential and feeling the best I've ever felt. So I didn't want to tell people because I didn't want people to not hire me for jobs. And like, I think of it this way. It's like the few times I told bands, like, they got a little freaked out. I can still remember the guys in Somos' face when I got a little too drunk hanging out with them and mentioned it. It's weird because, there's a lot of people who go through horrible, horrible things when they have cancer. And then there's sometimes that it's just like, wow, this is really weird I have this, but I caught this early enough that it's not really affecting my life yet.
Yeah, it's interesting from the point of an observer because I feel like, I don't know, in TVs or movies or whatever, you hear like person has cancer and then it's too late and they get rushed off. And that's obviously the case a lot in real life. And that's like very tragic. But you handled it in pace, even though you may have like missed a meeting or two or something. And then it was interesting to see that it was like kind of quick for you in terms of being better. I think we may have recorded an episode or two of of catch up just in case you did have to miss shows, but it seemed to go a little smoother than I think you may have anticipated.
They told me I was going to be down for the count for probably about 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
I was fine after 3 days. Like I literally, by 7 days, it didn't even feel like I had surgery. By day 3, I was taking 4-mile walks, and I went back to work on day 4 and started touching up some mixes. And, it really, I don't want to say it wasn't a thing, because then later on when they went to do the final part of my treatment, so the first treatment was taking my thyroid out. So now I take a pill each day that does my thyroid functions for me. But then at one point I had to get a radioactive, it wasn't chemotherapy, but it was a radioactive treatment. And during that time, they had to take me off my thyroid pills. So for the 2 weeks I wasn't on my thyroid pills, I did feel absolutely terrible. I was really, really groggy. My brain wasn't working great. And those 2 weeks were actually, funny enough, unlike the surgery where like kind of the time I had to take off from work. I really couldn't get much of anything done. I don't even really remember it. I watched all of the show Ray Donovan, and I couldn't really tell you much about it at all. But I think one of the things I really wanted people to take away from this, and why we're talking this show, is that, one, our conception of what cancer is and what people feel like during it aren't always the same, and I wouldn't always assume that somebody's well or not well when they're going through it, or incapable of living their life. And then 2, because it was, there was like really weird things, like, my life didn't ever really go on pause. Like even post-diagnosis, I started a new relationship and fell in love with somebody, and I did tons of great records. I wrote a lot of my book during that time, and I kept a really clear head. And one of the things I will say also that helped me keep a clear head is I really didn't stay up worrying about this and dwell on it too much, because I read a lot of stoicism during it, and a lot of that stoicism is about, Ryan Holiday actually wrote a great book called The Obstacle is the Way, that is like kind of like what stoicism is and brought into a modern light. And it talks about how the things in your life that are hard that you go through are just going to make you stronger. I really took that, and I tried to make all of this be something where I didn't worry too much. I didn't think about all the things that could go wrong. And I tried to make sure I wasn't thinking about thoughts that would be stupid to think about.
And maybe a little more just perspective for you as well, I would imagine.
Yeah, it's tough because, when you go through something like this, it's so hard to not let your mind wander. But I really learned over the years from, like, whenever there's been bad things that have happened to me in my life, of that, like, whether it's a loved one being sick or a bad breakup, that I try to not dwell on things for too long. Like, once, I think it's healthy to sit there and think, and then there's a point where you have to say, okay, I've thought about this enough for this span of time. Let me go do something like work or whatever that'll take my mind off this. Let me go see a friend and hang out. Do something so you're not sitting there and dwelling. It's good to think about something like this every day or 2 for a little bit of time. But if you're sitting around all day thinking about it, it's going to eat you up. It's going to just make it worse. I think the other thing I'd like everybody to know, too, is that, we're living in a time where you see people constantly having these benefits. There was a great benefit for Nate from Ensign this last week in New Jersey that really was heartening to see so many people come together and bands get back together to raise money for me. He has a really aggressive cancer, unlike mine. And it was really heartening to see that happen. But what I wanted people to understand is I just went through the healthcare system, and I know a lot of musicians are really poor and make no money. If you go through this and you think, I don't have the money for insurance, there's a thing called family care in most states that you can, 1, get your insurance through. 2, Obamacare does not discriminate against pre-existing conditions. So that means even if you're diagnosed, you can still get health insurance that can help offset your bills. And I want people to make sure they know that there's lots of options available if you do get sick, but don't use this as a reason to get bogged down. Because I had insurance and I was able to navigate through the healthcare system properly, I didn't need to call on people to do a lot of events. And because my cancer wasn't as aggressive as someone like, let's say, Nate's, which is stomach cancer, which is much, much more aggressive. Make sure you prioritize, if you're feeling sick, to get checked up as soon as possible. One of the stupidest things, because I didn't feel sick.
Yeah. So explain. I'm curious to hear about a little more about the ear thing. Like, so is that like a natural thing to get blocked up?
I get it once a year when I overwork. I'm literally for about 17 years now.
Is that like a common producer thing?
Most of my good friends get it when they work too much. Like, it's just literally your ear saying, dude, fucking relax.
Take a break.
Like, and this is
too much punk.
Yeah, it's usually when I've been doing 16-hour days nonstop, not taking days off, which is something I've been prone to do. And I still am not very good at avoiding. But I think there's even a thing of that, you and I both being around musicians, you see how often they're on tour and they're really feeling something terrible and they're not getting it checked out. Getting it checked out, and I'm somebody who's very doctor phobic, and I don't mean that I hate doctors in a discriminatory way.
You just don't want
I don't want to go there. I don't want to enter the healthcare system. I don't want to be a part of it ever. I just want to hopefully cure it with something organic, and I try to just treat my body well so I don't have to go to the doctor in general. But then there's also the time to realize that, yes, there's things that only a doctor can cure. But I think the point I want to impress is that getting a regular checkup is something that's really important. And, especially if you're living that life where you're eating ramen all day and you're in that van and all that stuff, it's important to make that time. And I know I sound like the dad, the cop, the suit, but that saved my life.
Yeah. No, it's obviously good that you were like, oh, maybe this is a little worse than it normally is.
Yeah. And the other thing I said, it was funny to watch Filmage about when Bill Stevenson woke up from his surgery, and you're like, I had a very similar thought, because anytime you go into surgery, you can die. And I think the best thing about this is that I've gotten a little bit more focus from this now. Everybody's going to have some bad moments in their life. And I think part of what I was getting at with the stoicism thing is that some people, when they have the bad thrown out, they just dwell and they sit and they look at them and they go, I can't believe this happened to me, da-da-da-da. No matter what bad comes at you, you have to figure out how to turn it into something good. I know I've told this story in a different way about the man overboard when Real Talk got leaked, that we turned it around and we put it onto the Bandcamp. This was a very similar thought of whenever I have something bad thrown at me, I try to think about how I can turn it into something good. And I sat there and I thought a lot about it. I'm like, okay, well, if I'm going to be held up, I made sure I saved some work that I could probably do in bed. I could work on my new book, and I saved some grammar work and stuff like that. And you got to think about how you turn these things into an asset. And yes, there's some cancers that are really not going to let you do that, but and some things in life, but you got to try to find what they are and what you can learn from them that's constructive, because bad things are going to happen to you.
Yeah, it's very easy. I mean, and obviously in all the situations to get super negative, which is I'm very good at.
You're good at being negative, or you're good at not being negative?
Well, I'm good at seeing the massive problem and not. I mean, ultimately, of course, wanting to turn it around, but just not, or being very stressed or letting that eat me and not. It's hard for me to I get in a rut. Grace will yell at me. She'll be like, you need to just stop being a total grump or stressed out to the point where it makes the work worse or your health worse or whatever. It's very, very easy, I think, for probably a lot of people to get into that mindset.
Yeah, I think that is part of the stoicism thing, is that it's a weird thing that to program your brain. I always talk about it, and I know we've talked about depression before on here, and one of the things I had to do when I was younger is I was so programmed to go to a negative place and be so pessimistic that I had to program my brain to do the opposite thing, is to just say, no, you can do this. And I've helped a friend recently with this a lot, and it's just it's one of those things of you can't go negative in any way. It's just there's nothing good that comes from going negative.
Totally. Yeah, especially when you don't necessarily know the outcome. But you So on that note, I guess you are good,
Yeah, so
right?
it's been 4 months since they told me that the cancer is gone, and now with cancer, it's always a thing of that. It can spring up somewhere else, but I feel amazing. The treatment was successful. The way they put it to me that this will not be the thing that gets me is thyroid cancer. Is that we've moved on past that. So, there's always the risk of that, your cells continue to deform, but I feel great. And anytime I go there, the doctors say that I'm doing great. So everything's looking good.
He's only just become grumpy in the last few weeks, and that has nothing to do with that.
That has to do with working too much, which incidentally is what got me in this bad situation. I should probably take a hint from that. But hey, you know what? After I slept all yesterday, I'm feeling a little less grumpy.
Yeah, I put you right to sleep after that podcast.
You kind of did. I kind of did sleep for 16 hours.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Ooh. I woke up, first day of school today. I woke up at 5:30 and could not get back to sleep. That's the life of an old man. You gotta wake up early.
So it's funny. I woke up at 5:30 and then I watched that Scientology documentary, and that scared the living crap.
Is this part of the? Is this going to be part of the documentary list you make for the website?
Well, that's just gonna be punk documentaries. There's nothing punk about Scientology.
There's not gonna. Okay, I actually saw someone else tweet about it. So is this like a new thing that has come out that everyone
on HBO, on HBO?
Got it.
Documentary on Scientology that woke me up out of being scared for our society that anybody could believe that stuff.
Is Tom Cruise in it?
Oh, there's so much Tom Cruise in it.
Okay, I would. I mean,
you can't do Scientology without Tom Cruise.
Right. I would. Now, I mean, I'll consider. I wouldn't have considered watching it if Mr. Cruise wasn't in it. So now I may consider watching it.
Him and a whole lot of John Travolta.
Oh, really? Mr. Travolta?
He's a huge Scientologist. Him?
No, I don't really know him. I've never seen Grease, so I don't really know. I assume it carries through.
Him and Will Smith.
Really? Will Smith, too?
Will Smith and his wife are. Well, you know, the joke is...
Is that why he made my two favorite movies, I, Empire, and the other one I'm forgetting about?
Are you being serious? You like those movies?
Well, look, you got to understand. I was in like 6th or 7th grade when those...
Okay.
You know the other one I'm talking about? Like New York Goes to Hell.
Yeah. I Am Legend or whatever.
I love that movie.
I've even seen. You know me. I don't watch action movies. I've seen that one, and that was terrible.
You got to imagine like a 6th to an 8th grader. Like those are some awesome movies. Now I know what I'm gonna like watch on my flight across the country this week.
Rough, dude.
Man, Will Smith, a Scientologist. Everything. Fresh Prince feels totally different.
There was a really good tweet that somebody said that there's lots of things in this world that you want to just forget when you learn them, and one of them is that Beck is a Scientologist.
Who else? This documentary must be really bad for some people's personal brands.
Yeah. It's not going to do people very well, and it's also probably going to help get them so they're not tax exempt for the religious organization anymore. It's a really ugly documentary.
So it's not like I see. So it's more like we're shedding some concerned light.
Man, I thought we hit peak tangent the other week on the one of the episodes, but when we would go from cancer to Scientology.
I mean, this is what people tune in for.
To Will Smith's career, we're really getting peak tangent in here.
This is what they tune in for. For anyone concerned about I Am Legend, I'm on the Wikipedia page, and it looks like we are getting that long-desired follow-up. That long-desired sequel. And I'm happy to report now that Jesse and I will see it together.
Yeah. Don't see that one happening.
All right.
I gave the message I want to give people. But, yeah, I think the other last thing to say is I want to impress not everybody who feels bad is, faking it or needs to eat organic juices. Some people's cancer is really bad, but some people's is not. You should listen to what they say and listen to how they feel and how they tell you they feel, not assume one way or another that they're either doing great or they're doing bad. Kids, get your checkups.
Get your checkups. I have to go to the doctor soon.
I mean, you're about to go into the real world. You better get checked up before, otherwise, you might have.
I am. I have that sweet school insurance until sometime soon.
I was going to say, then when you decide to go to graduate school, Yeah, I know that's not how.
I don't even know how I'm gonna make it the next 10 weeks. It's so hard at this point, but I'll get there.
10 weeks. That's all you got left.
Yeah, it's 10 weeks, and I'm skipping one of them, and yeah.
That's pretty good.
All right. Our last sad topic this week, or happy topic, whatever. Our last deep topic is about, we got into a conversation on the last episode about bands and writing songs, and Jesse's mentality that bands should write, tell me if I'm wrong, but bands should essentially write a lot more than they use, and to kind of flex their creativity and pick from the best. And we wanted to get into that for the second half of this episode.
We got into this the other week where I was talking about like one of the things that I think's been lost in the modern era of making great records is that like a lot of time bands don't have the time to reflect on if they actually did the song right. Like they basically get done recording and then they're like, okay, cool, we're done recording. And then they don't even like listen back to see if there's holes in the songs or like they could improve the song. It's just like, oh, we reached the finish line. Like it's like a video game. Like you beat that level. It's like, okay, go mix the song. I guess we're done. And
interesting. I think part of the conversation also too came from we were talking about a shift from bands writing 14-song albums to going down to 10 and being more concise. Yeah. And then you said that there should still be writing.
Yeah.
Basically.
So what I was going to say is I think that that's one of the big things that's been lost, the thing I was just saying. And then this is another one that I continually see going downhill. And I think it's one of the most important things. Like, so if you think about it this way, like Rick Rubin, who we all know, one of the single most successful record producer in rock music now, he holds the title for. Rick Rubin has a great story of like that. He always tells the band to write 2 to 2.5 records for every one they release. So then when he went to go do the record with Black Sabbath, they laughed at him and they're like, yeah, we're writing 14 songs. He's like, okay, I'll let you guys have a 9-song record then. But like, he's very, very adamant and has been since the beginning. Like, there's a great story in this long Daily Beast article about Rick Rubin about how when the Beastie Boys were doing License to Ill, which, you know, really is a game-changing record, that they're like, when are we going to be done with this record? We've written so many songs, but he really just kept having them write songs and having them write songs and record them until he felt like they had a solid record. And I think that that's like, it's really getting lost. Like I'm particularly like I'm seeing when bands come to the studio, they're not right. They're like, okay, we got 8, we can go. Okay, we got 8, we can go. And it's like, that's not the right way to do it. And I think about, you know, like even like, I think I've told this before on this podcast, but I want to say we had 40 to 50 demos before we did Bad Overboard's Hung Up on Nothing EP, and we picked from the best. And then we kept picking from the best and maturing those songs as we went along. And they had so many there, and that's what was able to make us put out such a big part of that output in the beginning, is that, like, as we could get a song to fruition and, like, be able to get that objectivity to bring it to a better place, we would do that. And it really enabled us to have a really high quality output at first.
It's interesting to me because, like, I think, and like ultimately your perspective just wins, but I think like to a lot of the non-technical people, I don't know that I think this more or less than I did when I was like, whatever, doing interviews when I was 16 or 17 or seeing bands like tweet stuff when I was that old too. But it'd be like, I felt like it was always the poppier rock bands like the All Time Lows or the Mains or the Mayday Parades, whatever, that would be like wrote 60 songs or 40 songs, whatever, and then I'd listen to 13 of them and be like, I think like 4 of these are good. Like
that is a thing too.
And I know that can be like part of the band, whatever. It's not, I'm not like trying to point out any bands to make fun of, but I in my mind, like if I'm thinking back, I can't really think back to a time where I can remember like Bayside, Census Fail, The Wonder Years, whatever, you know, bands maybe more from a truly punk start being like, yeah, we wrote 50 songs and now we picked 15 of them. And 12 of those are good or something. And so the perspective is interesting because it feels jarring to what I find like real. Because to me, it's like we got to write that one hit. But I don't know. It's none of it's necessarily accurate. It's just like in my head, I guess.
Well, I think there's an interesting thing with a lot of those bands too, is that then they don't know. I think there's 2 things that happen. Their one becomes an option paralysis where you don't even know what's good anymore because you've lost perspective, and you maybe don't have a manager or a producer who's helping you guide that very well of which ones to choose. And then two, with that option paralysis, is that like I think there also is a thing that we don't talk about all the time too. That I was having a conversation. I don't think it was on our podcast, but like hearing that Max Bemis from Say Anything wrote 1,000 songs for that song shop on. I think he was talking about it on the Matt Pryor podcast, and like. I just feel like if you do 1,000 songs, the song becomes so devalued. Like, I don't know how you even can sit there and choose which one's worth bringing to fruition anymore. And I think that there is a thing, and I've seen it with like a couple of my more prolific songwriter friends, that when they almost get too prolific, it starts to become that they can't even tell which one's really good, aside from a few exceptional ones, of what to really bring to light.
So we have a balance bit.
Well, I think that there's a happy medium, but yeah, if that's what you mean by balance, is that like you can write too much. Like I always find it weird. Like, so Rancid usually makes between a 16 and a 22 song record, if I'm guessing correctly from my love of their music, and like, but they're famous for writing 40 to 60 songs a record. And
yeah, that's crazy, man. And it's funnier on that. Well, in some ways, it's like, oh, duh, like the song's been 30 seconds long. But also not. I don't. It's just an interesting perspective, as well as I think of like last year there were 2 albums, one of which you worked on, that were really fantastic, and they were actually under 10 songs.
Yeah.
Somos was 8.
Yeah, 8 or 9.
8 songs. And Hotel Year, I think, was also. I may be wrong on the Hotel Year song one, but I think that was also like 9 songs. And that was the first. Usually, when I see something like that long, or to some people short, I'm like, wow, that's interesting. Yeah, the Hotel Year album is 9 songs, too. And usually when I see stuff like that, I'm like, man, this better be, like, fucking great, right? Because in my mind as a music listener, and Jesse, you were talking about this on the last episode, while sometimes you tend to get bored after 36 minutes or something in an album, a lot of our albums happen to actually be, a lot of our favorite albums happen to be longer than that. Like Untitled by Blink is over 40 minutes long. Devil by Brand New is 6 minutes long. And so it's as a listener whose favorite albums are typically a little longer, maybe, when I get a Somos album and it's 27 minutes long and 9 songs, I'm like, man, these better all not be hits, but like really good quality, because that feels like a condensed product. And I know this is a little different than talking about writing a lot of songs, but I'm kind of all about 9 phenomenal songs or really good songs versus like 13 songs and having half of them be really great and half of them be like, eh. It's like those 2 albums. I never really thought about it before those 2 albums became a constant mix of mine last year.
So here's a funny thing of like the history of that too, is I can remember when Lifetime put out Hello Bastards and Jersey's Best Dancers, 2 classic Jade Tree releases, that everybody was like, oh my God, they're so short, but they're all hits. And everybody would be like, wow, those Lifetime records are only 22 minutes long. But everybody was like, those records are all hits, and every song, like, you would never take a song off, you don't hit skip on them. And the way they would always justify is they're like, hey, Gorilla Biscuits Start Today is 24 minutes. And that really was the thing of that, like, Gorilla Biscuits like led that way on like, here's all these 1 minute and 45 second songs, and we're gonna have a 14 song record, but it is gonna be. And it's funny, too, because, like, when you talk about, like, what punk rock did is, like, a lot of professional recording contracts would be that...
Oh, you'd have to have at least X amount of mastered songs.
32 minutes was usually the thing. So, and if you think of it this way, 32 minutes is a happy medium. With 21 minutes being the maximum size you're going to get on an LP, 32 minutes makes a lot of sense for a band. But I think that's also what dictated a lot of this. And then you'd get the prog rock bands who wanted to go double record and be more expansive. But like, this was a very common thing. But I think we are seeing this thing like where it's like, man, like, Romp came in to do pre-production the other week, and it was like that thing of like, say 22 minutes. And I'm like, whoa, that's might not even be legal in your record contract with like, whatever label you end up putting this out with. And I do think that there's a thing that, while if it's all hits, no one feels like cheated. But man, if you put out a record and there's 3 bad songs and it's only 22 minutes and somebody pays a full length price for that, that's kind of a cheated thing.
On that note, what do you think about like a band like Knuckle Puck or Real Friends, really, who took the route of releasing a few EPs to sort of get a sound or get a style or get experience under their young belts before diving into a record that's either anywhere between 10 and 14 songs?
That's the way you're supposed to do it.
Got it.
I mean, I was having this discussion. There's this great band I work with called Save Face, and they're great kids. And their music, I did 2 EPs with them, and like one of them got a little thrashier, and now they're getting a little bit more brooding. And like I said it to them, like they were like worried. They're like, "Oh, this sound change." I'm like, you know what? When you're doing EPs and singles and splits, that's when you're supposed to be finding your sound. Like you think about what Title Fight sounded like on that first record compared to Hyperview.
Different band.
Yeah, I mean, if you played it for most people, you wouldn't even think it was the same band.
Right. Yeah, it's I find it kind of cool. Like I cannot really think there's a lot of EPs that I love from all of music, but there's not too many from bands where it's like multiple EPs in a row. The only other band I can think of in the period between them and Knuckle Puck and Real Friends was Balance and Composure released 2 EPs, actually 3 EPs, but 2 prominent EPs, one on their own, and then they released like a split EP with Tiger Straw, but they each had like 4 songs, so it was a legitimate EP. And I think it's cool because you kind of develop your sound, and then I think the Balance and Composure and Knuckle Puck comparison's a little apt, actually. Like the 2 EPs had a continual sound, a little different, and then like the LP took it a truly great step forward. And we'll see on a Knuckle Puck LP, and everyone will have their own judgment. But I think it's interesting and I think kind of enjoyable for the music fan to track the evolution. Like Knuckle Puck, like The Weight That You Buried by Knuckle Puck was a lot more like, there wasn't a lot of like depth to the music, I think. And then their split with Neck Deep got a lot more into that. And then so did the last EP, While I Stay Secluded. I think it's good. And I think in terms of like promotion of an EP versus an LP, it's a shame to like have 10 songs you're really proud about or 14 songs you're really proud about kind of vanish because your band was nothing, or because you didn't know how to promote it right. And then by the time like anyone catches on to it, they'll already expect a new album from you.
Yeah, it is weird because like bands get very sacred about their early material a lot of time. But like fans go back and find that stuff if they really love it. And like, I think 1, there's that. And then 2, you learn so much each time you record, especially if you record with different producers early on. You're going to learn a lot about doing things different and going around. And I'm not saying you should gratuitously switch producers. I think that's a very big mistake a lot of bands make, actually.
Like just for the fuck of it?
It's so funny because like there's it's...
Is that a thing?
Yeah, I mean, like there's a weird thing that like sometimes people are like, oh, well, we got to learn from these producers who are kind of mentors, or like you get that all-time low thing where you're just gonna like go to all these different producers and throw shit at the wall. And
that's part of what I was saying before. You know, I feel like there was like a hot minute there when those bands were really trying to get on the radio, right? And like you'd have 3 songs produced by someone else, produced by 3 different people, and then the next 7 songs produced by one. And that like felt so major label-y, even when those bands weren't on major labels.
Yeah, no, it was everybody trying to do that thing. And there still is that thing. Like to be honest with you, I've been on 2 records recently where I'm the 3rd producer on them. And I'm not the 3rd producer because the producers quit. It's like they go in and then they're like, well, what would you do different with this? And I'm like, oh, well, this, I don't like this. And then like I do some work and God knows what it's going to sound like when they take it to the mixer finally.
Strange. I feel like I don't know. I want the cohesiveness. Like,
but I think that's also the difference between like like I think did that great is that first Forever the Sickest Kids record that has like 4 producers on every track and in a different mixer. I think it's actually realistically it's 3 producers because it's Rockwell, Squire, and the guy from that band Self, and then they had somebody else mix it. So it's like all these people coming up with ideas on it, and it can work. But I mean, for a band like Knuckle Pucker Real Friends, that's like silly because you just don't.
It would just be bad. Like there needs to be like those records you want. I feel to tell more of a story than necessarily have singles.
Just want more cohesiveness in it, and I think that that's another thing to get into too. And is that like one of the things I don't see mentioned a lot is that like when you get into these producers writing for bands a lot, I think a lot of what gets lost in the band is their sense of melody, and then it just starts to sound jumbled and weird. Like there's so many times I hear records where it's like that record where they didn't do it with the producer who was like the writer.
Right.
It sounds really good, cohesive, and they have a sound. Then all of a sudden, then it sounds like, it just sounds like a jumble mush because they're doing harmonies they never would have done. They're doing melodies they never would have done. And it just sounds like a mush. And then the fans hate it. And they're like, this is stupid. And I think that that's the thing. Like, I'm very conscious of my productions is I try to bring out what a band would do instead of just saying, hey, here's what I hear here. It's like, hey, this part's missing something. What would you do here now that you know that there's something missing here? We need to thicken this up. What would you do instead of, hey, sing a fifth here? That's the harmony you should do. Now, granted, if all their ideas are bad, I might tell them to do something else and what I hear in my head, but that's a different story.
I wanted to go back to something that you said at the top of this part of the show. You mentioned that like not many bands take the time to reflect. They kind of just dive into finishing the album.
That's big.
And so was this something that was more prevalent? Because like so right now, Knuckle Pucker are finishing their album as we talk, and then we have a little time before we need to turn it into the label. So when the band comes back around on tour into Chicago halfway through, they'll have essentially like the final mixes. But they'll have a day or two if they want to make any like vocal or lyric changes, and then they'll be able to, punch them in and go from there. They'll have upwards of a month to sit on the songs and to feel them out. And they can't go back and like, trash a song and start a new one, but they actually do have a little bit of time to sit instead of just hitting push to iTunes basically.
Yeah.
And so that's a good thing in your mind.
I think that's some of the most important time in a record. So a lot of the way I developed the studio is I saw how much important that is that like I get a mix that's like 90% of the way there with the bands that I'm working with. And then I put it up on the Dropbox. I say, hey, let's listen back to this and see what's missing, see what's not working and what is working. And then we add to that mix. Cause like, so much of music is like, it's even the thing of like, too, like when you hear a band's practice tape off the iPhone and then you hear the GarageBand demo and then you hear how it sounds like when in a real production, you keep hearing more and more things because you can more clearly hear the music back and you get more ideas and you hear more of the things that need to be done to make this emotionally work. And I think that that's some of the most valuable time in making a great record, period. And if I was still managing bands, I would make that a mandatory part of every recording because I think that that's what makes a great record. As well, what you touched on too, and I kind of have talked about this a little before, is the redoing a song if you have to. There's certain times that you have to sit there and say, we did not nail this. Like, a perfect example is, so I just produced this great record for this band, Stories of Living. And, like right now we're having the thing of like, we've done the first round of mixes. I'm going through the changes. They're going to come back in. We're going to touch a few vocals up, change the voicings on a few guitar parts so things kick in a little bit more and add a gang vocal or two to certain parts that we didn't realize should have them. And these guys had pretty extensive demos, but like there was one song where it's like we got there and we realized like this is not the right key of the song, and we had to just start over basically and re-record everything except the drums because the key should be different, and we just didn't hear that in the demo process. And there's times you got to be honest about that and do that because that's the difference between having a mediocre song that's not really working and one that everybody's going to skip on, or having that record we were talking about that we want to have, which is that no one skips the songs.
Huh. Yeah, absolutely. It's cool. Like I like having the perspective, and also like, I feel like it takes kind of takes like chops to be like, you know what? And, some of this is on the producer, but a lot of it's on the band too, especially, I guess, if there could be a disagreement with the producer or vice versa. But like having the chops to be like, you know what? It's not the end of the world. This is like long term, this is going to be okay and better, hopefully.
Well, usually these patch ups too, you got to remember, take one day of time. So let's say you're doing the average thing for a full length. Let's call it average full length, about 2 weeks ish. Taking one extra day where you put in, let's call it $500 more to do this, is the biggest difference in that $500. I mean, but yeah, you also touched on something that's a little interesting, is like whether it's the producer. I think one of the most popular articles and sections of my book that I wrote was about how a band is the worst person at choosing the single and choosing the order of the album. Because the band is often sitting there like, well, I like this song, and they like the newest songs first, or they like the one that really came alive in the studio the most, but they're not remembering that, that third song you wrote out of 12 was actually the best song, and, you need to put that up front.
You're too close to the situation.
Yeah, and like, there used to be a really interesting thing, and I can't believe, like, every time I say this, was like citing Bon Jovi for doing something smart.
Oh my God, I almost just... Okay, I'm still alive.
Bon Jovi used to do this thing called the pizza parlor jury, because they're from New Jersey, and we all know that New Jersey is one of the 5 states that you can get good pizza at in America.
I feel like that surprises people. I think a lot of people, whether it's because of like just bad Jersey bias or not, wouldn't expect good Jersey pizza. And honestly, and I know I'm about to maybe get some shit thrown my way, maybe not by you, but I really, honestly, like in my town of West Milford, I find that 9 out of 10 times I'm getting better pizza than I would in New York. Except at my select spots in New York that I trust no matter what.
Listen, there's a lot of Italians over in that county. And, that's the thing. You can only get good pizza in Connecticut, New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Delaware. Those are the only places good pizza exists that's good.
Delaware, really? Everything about Delaware scares me.
There's parts of Delaware where you can still get great pizza, particular shore towns. Anyway, off that ridiculous tangent that we just had. So Bon Jovi would go into a pizza parlor and
this is about Bon Jovi.
And find the Bon Jovi fans. They would play them their new record and say which song stood out to you the most immediately, and that's what they would use for singles.
I love that. I love that. That's why when you walk into Brooklyn pizza shops, they're playing Fall Out Boy. They're just sampling the music.
Oh, jeez. So interestingly, with Real Talk, we did this with Man Overboard, is that we had an open call to come to the studio, and a bunch of people came and we listened to like what they thought were the best songs.
Did you say on the podcast with Jeff that we had a few episodes ago that you guys were going to cut Montrose or something like that? Or maybe you wrote it later?
Montrose wasn't originally on Real Talk.
And that became like the hit.
When we realized that one song wasn't good enough to be on Real Talk, you got to remember there's a couple songs on Human Highlight Reel that were recorded in the Real Talk sessions.
Right.
And one of the ones we thought was going to be on Real Talk, we were like, this is not cutting it. This isn't good enough. So we went in, and here's another funny thing about that. The vocals, I want to say, for Montrose are just the vocals from Dahlia, but we redid all the other instruments. And like, I think like I left the piano parts that we played and some of the effects I made in the original recording. But like we sat back, me, Zach and Nick were sitting there in the studio at like midnight one night, and we're like starting to go through the record and listen back, and we're like, you know what? This is missing another hit. We got to do this right now. And that's one of the most important parts, is sitting and judging the record at the end and figuring out what it needs and what it doesn't need.
I like that. I think a large part of the issue, and this is not really even just related to recording, I feel like it's related to so much in the music industry I deal with every day, is like the deadlines are not like, the deadlines themselves aren't crazy, but it's more the constraint we put on the deadlines, right? Like the band can't listen for a month because they could only fit in going to the studio the exact month before they go on tour for 6 months, and they couldn't get in any earlier because they got rushed in there in the first place. And that means there's no time to sit back, to write another song, to write 2 more songs, to cut a song, to take an extra 2 weeks to listen to mixes and or to not listen to mixes and then come in with like a fresh perspective, right? Like, it's like the same thing with just announcements or streams and stuff. It's like, oh great, we're gonna proof the biography, or we're gonna proof the press release 12 hours before we're announcing it all. It's like so often I feel like with music, stuff truly comes down to the wire because we don't have enough time to do it, or to do it the proper way, or not to sound like old because I wasn't even alive when this probably was the case, but like to do it the old right way.
Yeah,
you know?
it's hurry up and wait. I think the music business has always been hurry up and wait, but you are correct in that. Like, so there's even like a very standard practice of like even 12 years ago when we'd be doing like big budget major label records and I'd be working on it, is that, you know, we would even, never mind that you would write 20 songs and then record 12, you would actually write those, let's say 24 songs for your 12-song record, but you'd record 18 of them, and then a couple of those might go on a soundtrack, or there'll be a B-side or something else.
Yeah.
And or
Totally.
the Japanese import. I mean, that was some of why during Real Talk,
The Japanese import, some great songs on the Japanese imports of yesterdecade.
Yeah, well, and that was one of the things too. And I feel like that's disappearing fast too. And it's like it's just like all this stuff is getting thrown by the wayside, and it's really what helps makes records better. And so many bands that are just overlooking this, and they're getting to that finish line, and they're just going, it's done. And so the other thing about recording that extra 3 songs is there really is off of that thing of like, if we're doing a 12-song record and we record 15 of them, usually one of those songs that you think's going to make it and then you don't think's going to be the other one, they're going to reverse roles. The one you thought was the B-side's going to make it on the record, and one of the ones that you thought was pretty good is going to be like, you know, that just didn't end up with as many magic moments as that other one, and now we got to swap them out. There's a certain thing, too, that, like, you know, while the core of the song is what matters the most, and just somebody sitting around playing an acoustic, if it's a good song with a good melody, that's usually going to trump any of the cool effects and things. But every once in a while, there's enough magic that happens in the studio on a song that all of a sudden that one just kicks it into an extra gear, and it is better than another song.
So this kind of relates, but I guess as a producer, like, is there typically an amount of time you like to have with a band? Like Knuckle Puck right now has spent 35 days in the studio for their full length. Enema of the State was recorded in 2 weeks. I know sometimes punk bands will record
I'm not buying that Enema of the State was recorded in 2 weeks. That's Jerry Finn. He did.
I'm just saying that's what they say. I don't know. I don't know why they'd say that.
Because bands always. So here's one thing I can tell you that
maybe because they wanted to feel punk.
Bands lie about their recording experiences all the time. Joe Barresi, famous producer, would intentionally tell a crazy lie about it. Like, there was a Queens of Stone Age record he did. He said, we only used one microphone on the record, but it was numerous ones of that same record. Then you watch the making of the record, and there's 20 different brands of microphones on it. He said for the Tool record, they filled the room with helium so the drums would be bigger.
Whoa.
Yeah, that was not true.
That rules. Oh my God, that is sick.
People pass this around on the internet. And now, a great example. So I used to work with a band called Bad Wizard. And I'm like sitting on the internet one day recording, like reading an interview with the guy. And he's like, well, we recorded our new record at a castle. I'm like, when did my parents' basement become a castle? It's a small apartment.
Wait. Helium, though.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
But you got to remember, like, saying you recorded it in 2 weeks sometimes. Like, so for example, they did that record with Jerry Finn. Jerry Finn is known for doing extensive pre-production. So sure, you could have recorded some of it in a 2 week span, but I'm not buying it. The mixing and the pre-production all in was 2 weeks. Not buying it at all.
Okay, but
that's also a very simple record.
We can even remove the Blink comparison, right? Like some bands take a month, some bands I feel do or did take 2 weeks, some bands take a longer. Like, is it for you? Do you think that's more of a producer thing, a band thing, or often, unfortunately or fortunately, like a money
It's
thing?
usually all about the money. You know, it's like very funny because, like, you know, you talk about that Somos record, and I think we did that all in 8 days.
Damn. Wow, really?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
It is astounding.
It's not like surprising, but it's crazy because it's like, not that it wouldn't be good, but it's like, damn, that's really good.
I mean, I'm lucky enough that with my studio, because Mike, my co-producer, he works in a second room. So we're technically getting twice as much done as the average studio because both of us are working at the same exact time through all of it. But there's also a big thing that, like, you know, in general, a 30-day record is what you want for the aspirational full length. Now, some bands do not need that 30 days at all, but there's even a thing of like, too, is like sometimes people see that the White Stripes took 30 days. Well, the White Stripes take a different approach. They'll sit and they'll play that song 40 different times and choose the take. The same the way the Beatles would take months on end to do a record, is that they'll play until it feels good. And that's important for that style of band. Just as it's important for, like, if you're going to make Take Off Your Pants and Jacket, to maybe play with those keyboard parts a few times until you figure out which one's the most inspired keyboard line. And like the little bells and whistles on some of these records, not just going with your first idea and like working out that part until it's perfect, really is a big deal on certain records. And I think that that's what gets into
so many little things to think about for things that I fully rely on for my living, yet don't have any actual like holdover.
Yeah, and but there's also other bands who ruin their records by sitting there and putting these bells and whistles on forever. Like I shouldn't rat this band out for it. It wasn't a record I produced, but there's this certain record that everybody's like, wow, that thing was so overproduced. And it really was that band having an extra 5 days to dick around and ruin the record.
Wow.
And like, every review on Absolute Punk and every comment was like, what the fuck was this band thinking, putting all these stupid reverse symbols and sub hits all over their record when they didn't do it. And a lot of this comes down to having good taste too.
Taste is hard, Jesse. I mean, look at you. It took you decades to be as tasteful as you are today.
Dude, I've always had the classic taste, man. You're out of your mind.
Always.
You're out of your mind. There's no pictures of me looking stupid with bleached hair or anything or a leather jacket. Nothing like that. Ever.
I tried to grow my hair long once.
Really?
In an effort to be like Tom DeLonge, naturally. And
wait. What era did Tom have long hair?
Oh, well, he's still kind of not really anymore, but
That's
like
not
during
long
no,
hair.
You're right. No, so not like long hair, but like the emo bangs during Take Off Your Pants, Jack, and Untitled. And my mom was like, "It's not going to happen, but you can try." And little did I know that she meant I have like Jufro hair. At least back then I did. If I tried to grow it really long. And then I was like, well, why don't you just let me get my lip pierced like Tom DeLonge has? And she said no. Also. And I asked about tattoos. She also said no.
Are you glad you didn't get the lip pierced though now?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I will say about tattoos, yesterday, my father told me, look, we'll make a deal. I'll be okay with you getting more tattoos. You just have to wait until I die.
Well, I mean, I'm 30 days away from my next tattoo, so.
Wow, we should just all go. Thomas too. Maybe all three of us will go together. Just all get tattoos.
I'm getting mine down in New Orleans, so.
Oh well, then I'm definitely coming.
Oh, nice. So, do we have any recommendations?
I was going to ask you, Jesse, since I'm about to go on 2 cross-country plane trips. What do you have a plane routine?
Oh yeah, I'm usually all books on tape or all. See, it's tough to do movies on a plane because a lot of the best movies have really inappropriate scenes for strangers being next to you.
Yeah. I was listening. Yeah,
I wanted to binge on Masters of Sex one time, and then I realized how bad that would have been. Like, I was like, kind of like, oh crap, I can't do that.
It would even be questionable to do Mad Men.
I don't think there's anything wrong with
No Game of Thrones.
Definitely no Game of Thrones, but like. Books on tape usually plays. Documentaries are usually pretty good for a plane. You have all these punk documentaries to watch after I make you the list.
I'm waiting for you. Going to make it for me this week? I'm waiting.
My plan's to do it tomorrow.
Oh, okay.
So you'll have it, but yeah, watch Going Clear, and I'm going to also recommend the new season of House of Cards. I'm like enough of a way through it to say it's awesome.
Oh, so do you like it?
Yeah,
I've had a lot of conversations with a lot of people, and there's like, there's some people are just not into it at all.
I'm going to do that. You know what? I'm going to hold off on this recommendation until the album comes out. Never mind.
What will I recommend? I will be. I'm not. I don't know how it is yet, but I'll be starting to read or listen to the Becoming Steve Jobs book. I should probably just buy the audio, and hopefully that's good. And I will.
I can give you my Audible password.
Wow, that's.
Yeah. See.
Yeah. This is True Friends. So that will that's hopefully all I'll be recommending. And my girlfriend probably won't let me while I'm in California, but I'm really, really trying to see Fast 7, Jesse's also most anticipated movie of the year.
God, I can't believe you want to see that.
Oh my God, I am a mega fan of all the Fasts.
Dude, there's no amount of money that can make me watch one of those.
Dude, I'm gonna just get you super drunk one day and we're just gonna watch all the movies that I'll never be able to get you to watch. I'll try to like super cut all the movies basically and just get you to watch.
Good luck with that.
Well, thank you for listening. This has been another Grumpy End as Jesse has tragically ruined all of our childhoods for us. If you're listening live on Adobe and want to hear more or share it with your friend, please go to offtherecord.fm or check us out and subscribe on iTunes. Maybe leave a review. And we'll be back next week, and I'll let you know how Fast 7 was.